The sun blazed directly overhead, shrinking the clearing around the fortress. The looming threat of the approaching ghoul horde pressed down on every breath. Every leaf in the trees, every shake of a bush, every clatter of a tumbling branch sprung panic from tension. Ben stood in front of the fortress gate. He'd checked the rest of the walls, and they all stood firm. This rickety old door was the only way in. Hopefully, none of the ghouls would be strong enough to smash open another path through a wall. He thought about the survivors counting on him, the goat mother, Avery, and her kids, always huddled close. Marge, the widowed bear, who carried her grief like a shield. Blick, the brotherless dwarf, too stubborn to give up. Ernest, mangled in body but sharper than most. Nickel, the crafty dormouse, small but fearless. And Red. Ben's ears twitched at every sound in the forest. His eyes swept over every gap between the trees. The stout dwarf, Blick, stood next to him, his hammer at the ready. "We may not last this time," he muttered, a hint of fear in his lowered voice. "Better to go out howling than whimpering," Ben said. Blick squinted. "Eh?" Ben glanced down. "It's a wolf thing." "Ah." The dwarf nodded, satisfied. "Good words, lad." Marge came out of the fortress, carrying a warhammer. "Holy!" Ben hollered, ears shooting back at the sheer size of the weapon. Marge laughed. "I found it in the armory. Crude, but bound to be effective in my hands." Blick howled his own laugh. "A fitting weapon for our largest and strongest." Marge smirked and slung the weapon over her shoulder. "Hopefully, it'll give us an edge if anything big shows up. Remember, it's probably not just humans and speakers who've been turned into ghouls." Ben nodded and returned his attention to the trees. He glanced around for a moment and spotted Ernest standing atop one of the walls, his crossbow at the ready. From a distance, the crooked man looked calm, but Ben could see the stiffness in his stance, the kind born of primal fear. Everyone was afraid. Low growls rippled from the forest, swelling into guttural roars. The ghouls had arrived. "Hey, lad!" Blick tossed Ben a weapon. Ben caught it and stared at the decorated hilt of Umpty's sword. "Figured you'd make better use of it than that ruddy traitor." Ben nodded, tucked his spear onto his back, and clutched the sword firmly. As the first ghoul rushed out from the brush, he lashed out with the sword, slicing its torso open with one clean motion. Marge charged forward, growling ferociously as she brought her hammer down onto a larger ghoul's head, crushing its skull and buckling its spine. Blick ducked under the ghoul's reach and swung his own hammer at their knees, bringing them down one by one. From his perch, Ernest loosed bolt after bolt. Each one twisted through the air in crooked, impossible paths, looping, zigzagging, even corkscrewing, before striking dead on target. His curse saw to it. Nothing he made ever flew straight, but nothing ever missed either. The four of them kept up the fight, felling ghouls left and right until a massive roar shook the sky. They froze as a massive figure shoved a tree aside like a curtain. It hobbled forward on one strong leg, the other half rotted away. Its lips were gone, leaving its mouth stretched in a permanent grin of chipped teeth. "You have got to be kidding me," Blick cried out. "That's a bloody troll." The grey-skinned giant limped from the trees, leaning on one arm, while the other hefted an uprooted stump as a club. Riverweed and moss clung to its skin and ragged clothing. Around its neck swayed a necklace strung with goat's horns, grim trophies from hunts long before the ghouls took over. One of Ernest's bolts spun through the air in a bent, drunken arc before burying itself square in the troll's eye. The beast reeled back, howling, not from pain, but from fury. Another bolt corkscrewed sideways, only to plant itself deep in the creature's shoulder, as precise as if it had flown straight. The three in the fray shook themselves out of their shock and rushed the troll. It was the largest threat, so it had to be dealt with first. Ben slashed the troll's gut with Umpty's sword. Blick smashed its kneecap with the point of his hammer. Marge's warhammer crashed down on its hand, making the giant drop its club. The troll stumbled down, but didn't stop its attack. It kept reaching out to grab or smash them with its massive hands. It gnashed at them with its teeth, as if expecting them to just jump into its mouth. Ben lunged, leaping onto the troll's back. He drove the sword deep into its neck, then twisted hard, severing the spine. Adrenaline surged as he sprang clear just as the beast toppled dead to the ground. Another roar burst through the trees. Another troll? Ben's ears dropped as a familiar figure lurched out of the brush. A large brown bear with a still bleeding slash across his chest. Marge's husband. Marge's ferocious attitude faltered at the sight of him. She froze, the warhammer slipping from her grasp and thudding against the dirt. "Marge!" Ben shouted. She didn't answer. She only stood in fear, shock, and grief as her ghouled husband lumbered toward her. "Marge, move!" Marge snapped out of her shocked trance just in time to see her husband's arm raised and was able to evade the incoming attack. That's... Marge, I'm sorry. It's him. I'm sorry you had to see this." She looked at Ben, clearly noticing a tone in his voice. "You knew about this?" "He was with the horde that attacked Ernest's cabin. We didn't know how to tell you." "Talk later, lad. Kill now!" Blick roared as he darted around the hulking bear, drawing its attention. Ben looked up at Marge again. He could almost see the thoughts racing through her head as her expression sat between shock, fear, confusion, and despair. "Marge!" The mama bear straightened her posture. "Let's make it quick. He's suffered enough." She leaned down to recollect the warhammer. Ben looked at the bear ghoul's back and noticed the splintered bit of spear that Ernest left in its neck back at the cabin. Seizing opportunity, he rushed the big ghoul and jumped onto its back and grabbed the spear, trying to wrench it out. The bear immediately noticed and started flailing around to swat him off. It growled and snarled as it spun around, throwing Ben off its back before long. Blick took a swing at its knees, but the bear knocked him away before he could get close. Marge moved in behind the bear next. She halted just short of her husband's reach. Her eyes locked on the beast that had once been her closest love, the father of her son, the dad to their adopted daughter. Now, nothing more than a monster. "Marge!" Ben's hollering snapped her out of her trance again, and she acted quick. She raised the warhammer high and brought it crashing down on the splintered spear. The broken shaft punched upward through his neck and into his skull, killing him instantly. The massive corpse toppled forward, pinning Blick beneath it. "Oi! Get this brute off me!" the dwarf sputtered. Ben and Marge heaved the large figure up enough to let Blick crawl out. A fresh thud of a crossbow bolt striking flesh snapped them back to the fray. More ghouls stumbled from the woods, but these were sparse, scattered, leaderless. The true terror of this fight had already passed. Ben raised the sword. "Let's deal with the rest of them." He and the others rushed into the fray. After the last ghoul fell, silence draped over the battlefield. No more groaning, no more struggling, no breath left to spare. The three collapsed to the grass to recover. "Bleeding hell!" Blick gasped. "We won." Marge was the first to stand up again. She looked at the mountainous body of her husband. Ben noticed her mournful gaze. "Marge, I'm sorry. We should have said something before." "No, it's fine." She ran a clawed hand over her face, sniffling. "He's not suffering anymore. That's... something." She wiped away a tear and stood up to head back to the fort. Ben watched Blick stand up to follow her, then looked back at the carnage of fallen ghouls. Humans and speakers alike littered the field, a mess of flesh, fur, and the stench of spilled entrails. He picked up the sword again and walked back to the fort. Once back in the bunker, the noises of frantic commotion filled the halls. Ben rushed to Ernest. "Hey, what's going on?" The tall, crooked man loomed over him, eyes wide with panic. "It's Sir Humpty!" "We can't find him." "What?" Ben snapped at Blick. "You said you shattered his limbs?" "I did, lad, and I locked the door." "Then how is he not in that room?" "I don't bloody know!" Ben rushed around the bunker, searching for any sign of Humpty, anything at all. He found the room where Avery and her kids were hiding. The mother and her little ones all sat against the wall in a panic. "Ben," Avery called out. "What about the ghoul horde?" "It's over. We pulled through." "But Humpty's gone, so stay hidden until—" Ben's ear itched. Someone was missing. His gaze swept the room. "Where's Red?" "Red? Wasn't she with you?" Ben's ears dropped. "I told her to hide with you. You never saw her?" Avery shook her head. Panic drove Ben into a frenzy. He shut the door and ran out into the hall, calling out to Red at the top of his voice. Then he reached the chamber, the place where the ghouls were made. Its hastily repaired wall had been smashed open. He stepped inside, and there they both were. "Red! Stand back, Wolf!" Sir Humpty stood, one arm wrapped around Red in a death grip, the other clutching a jagged shard of porcelain from his own body. "And don't bother with that huff and puff stunt you pulled before. There's a pit lined with spikes behind me. The witch and I used it to dispose of failures. One puff, and we both go down." "You coward!" Ben yelled. "But how did you get out of the locked room?" "Blick shattered your limbs. He left one hand intact. I can still feel and control my pieces, even when they're detached. While you were all trembling in a corner, I was putting myself together again. Then this brat stumbled upon me while looking for those goats." "Let her go, Humpty. She's just a kid. A kid who could grow and remember this. No one is leaving this place in one piece." Blick rushed in to see the scene. His brow furrowed when he saw the fragile-skinned man. "Don't do anything stupid, dwarf. I know that's hard for you, but try to put in some effort for once." Humpty cackled. Blick seethed. "You're so damn lucky you have a hostage." Ben scanned the room, looking for anything, when his ears twitched at a soft scraping sound. Nickel crept alongside Humpty, dragging one of Ernest's knives across the floor. The dormouse locked eyes with Ben and held his finger to his lips. Ben didn't nod. He just looked up and started speaking again. "You won't win here, Humpty." Humpty just laughed. "Oh, won't I? Like you said, there may be other survivors out there, and with every ghoul that falls, their chances of survival grow. Don't go thinking you've won. The horde will still—" "The horde already lost," Ben said smugly. "What?" Blick laughed. "That's right. Your horde already arrived, and we fought them all off. Fell a ruddy troll among them." Humpty's stature faltered. "You're lying. Only 4 of you? And you fell scores of them?" Ben straightened up. "It's amazing what survival instinct and adrenaline can drive you to accomplish." Humpty pressed the shard to Red's neck. "Bullshit. You're bluffing, but I suppose I'll see for myself once I leave here." Ben glanced at Nickel, who tugged Red's cloak to get her attention as he raised the knife to her trembling hand. "You're the only one who isn't leaving, Humpty Dumpty." Humpty's face contorted into a furious scowl. "Don't call me that, you mutt." "Red, now!" Red clutched the knife and drove it into Humpty's thigh. "Ah!" Humpty's leg cracked and splintered under the blow, and he stumbled. Red ran to one side once she was free, jabbing his other leg as she went. Humpty dropped the shard and grabbed her cloak. His other hand grabbed a table to stop him falling into the pit. "You brat!" Red spun around and sliced the fabric of her coat with the knife. Humpty flailed as he tumbled into the pit, having lost one of the things holding him up. His other hand still held onto the table, narrowly saving him from falling. Ben knelt before the shattered man, his gaze blank. Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. He began, the children's mocking rhyme spilling from his lips. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall? Shut up. Stop singing that song. Stop it, you runts. He screamed, his mind now trapped in the past. All the king's horses and all the king's men. Ben snatched a loose brick and brought it crashing down on Humpty's remaining hand. The cursed man toppled backward into the pit of spikes and bodies below. Wouldn't put Humpty together again. A sharp crash echoed from the pit below. Then silence. No voice, no crackling, no ragged breath, nothing. Red stepped up, kicked the loose shard into the pit and muttered, "Bad egg." Blick joined the two of them. "Did you have to recite that song like that, lad?" "That was bloody creepy." Ben chuckled. "I wanted him to understand the terror he caused." He stood up and took Red's hand. "Let's tell the others the good news." They returned to the others and announced that Humpty was gone forever. Even if he somehow survived and tried to piece himself together, there was no way out of that deep pit. Avery and Marge both sighed deeply. "At least the children are safe now," Avery murmured, leaning against Ben's shoulder. He held her in return, especially Red. "I don't think I've ever been so scared in my life." Red jumped onto Ben's back, giggling. "And you were so brave. Quick thinking with the knife Nickel brought you." Red snuggled into Ben's fur. "Thank you," she cooed. Her voice was louder now, bolder, more alive. Ben pulled Red around to hold her against his chest. For a dwarf, an event like this calls for celebration. Blick cheered. "But if the lot of you need time to rest, I'll manage without." "No," Ernest announced. "I agree with our stout friend. This is a borderline historical event. In our fight to survive, we felled a horde, 2 giants, and the mastermind behind the ghouls' creation." Nickel scrambled up Ernest's coat and settled on his shoulder. "We don't have much food and few options," he noted. "So," Ernest chuckled, "we can still celebrate our biggest achievement together." The kids all began to cheer among themselves at the prospect of a celebration. Ben's ears perked as the sounds of merriment and newfound hope grew. Then what are we waiting for? For the first time since the fall of Fairytale Land began, the air in the otherwise oppressive space felt warm and alive.